Hey everyone, welcome back to TechBit Academy. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Welcome to the Explainer. Now we've all been there, right? You've got a project perfectly planned out, and then, boom, it completely goes off the rails. It happens to literally everyone who has ever organized anything, big or small. So today, we're unpacking the hidden pitfalls of project management by looking at the 6 faces of future problems. By the end of this, you're going to have a rock-solid mental map of exactly where things can, and usually do, go wrong. And more importantly, you'll know how to stop these disasters long before they ever actually hit your desk.
Let's kick things off with a deceptively simple question. What exactly is a possible future problem? I know, it sounds a bit philosophical, right? But framing it exactly this way is absolutely crucial for understanding what a risk actually is in any working environment. We aren't talking about the fires actively burning in your inbox today. We're talking about spotting the smoke way out on the horizon. It's kind of like being a forest ranger. You don't wait for the trees to catch fire. You're out there looking at the dry brush, checking the wind direction, and watching the lightning storms form miles away. That is what true project risk management is all about.
So let's look at Section 1, Defining Project Risk.
At its core, a project risk is a possible future problem that may or may not happen. And we really need to nail this down right out of the gate, because it carries a massive insight into why so many managers trip up. Far too often, project leaders treat risks like active issues, wasting a ton of energy putting out fires that haven't even sparked yet. Or, even worse, they completely ignore them until they explode. Remember, a risk is tied to future possibilities. It hasn't happened yet. The second it actually occurs, it crosses a threshold. It stops being a risk and just becomes a tangible issue you have to deal with. But while it's still in this purely possible state, it requires our absolute focus and strategy.
Now there's this really fascinating tension built right into every single risk you'll ever face, and that's the balance between uncertainty and impact. Every risk carries uncertainty because, well, it might not happen. But critically, it also carries a guaranteed impact, a very real effect on the project if it actually does happen. You always have to weigh the unknown against the potential damage. Think about deciding whether to carry an umbrella. If there's a tiny 30% chance of a drizzle, high uncertainty, low impact. You probably just risk it. But if there's a 90% chance of a Category 5 hurricane, yeah, you don't just grab an umbrella, you evacuate. It's that exact same balancing act with your daily projects.
Moving right along to Section 2, Technology and Timelines.
First up in our lineup of problems is technical risk. This is basically anything directly tied to the technology your project relies on. Think about the central nervous system of what you're working on right now. Is it a specific web app, a shared cloud server, some highly specialized machinery? In almost any modern endeavor, tech forms the absolute bedrock of the work. We rely on these tools just to execute our daily tasks. And when that foundation gets a little wobbly, believe me, the entire project shakes.
Software tools fail. I mean, it's just 3 words, but I bet you felt that sudden, stomach-dropping horror just hearing it. Think about the exact second your primary software platform just decides to quit in the middle of a crucial task. We're talking the classic blue screen of death, an unsaved document vanishing into the digital void, or your comms tool crashing right as you pitch a client. It's an everyday technical risk that literally stops your productivity in its tracks and sends everyone into pure panic.
And you know, this perfectly illustrates how risks are so deeply connected through this powerful domino effect. Because a technical failure, like that software crash we just talked about, almost always triggers our next category, schedule risk. Basically, a delay in your timeline. Let's say your main server goes down on a Monday, boom, technical risk realized. But because it takes your IT team 3 full days to rebuild the database, that big Friday deadline, it's now next Wednesday. You're officially behind schedule, which means your timeline stretches, and every single subsequent milestone gets pushed further and further back.
All right, let's jump into Section 3, Budgets and Resources.
We all know the old saying, time is money. So when those timelines stretch out because of schedule risks, you inevitably run into cost risk. This is the very real danger that your budget is going to unexpectedly blow up. And it's not just the delay itself that costs you. It's the secondary actions you have to take to fix it. If you lose a week to a software bug, you might have to pay your staff overtime to catch up over the weekend. Or maybe you're shelling out for expedited overnight shipping instead of standard freight. Suddenly, the cash you need just to get back to baseline completely skyrockets.
But hey, money can't fix absolutely everything. That brings us to resource risk, a lack of people or required skills. This really highlights the deeply human element of project management. You could have a blank check approved by finance and a flawless timeline. But what happens when your lead developer gets a nasty case of the flu for a week, or a super specialized vendor you depend on suddenly goes out of business? If you literally don't have the actual people in the seats, or if your team is missing a highly specific niche skill needed for the next phase of the build, your project is in massive jeopardy.
Which leads us to Section 4, Outside Factors and Requirements.
Let's talk about external risk. These are the completely outside factors, and honestly, they come with a profound feeling of helplessness. Why? Because they originate entirely outside the boundaries of your project environment. They happen outside your organization's four walls. The most meticulous, perfectly organized project manager in the world cannot control the outside world. But make no mistake, these external forces can absolutely derail everything you've planned. That is exactly why disciplined anticipation is your only true defense here.
And the scale of these external risks? It can vary wildly. Think of them as micro versus macro. On the micro level, maybe a localized internet outage severs your team's connection to the cloud, shutting down production for a really frustrating afternoon. Annoying, for sure. But on the macro level, you could face a sweeping government policy change or a new international regulation that legally alters how your entire project is allowed to operate. One ruins your Tuesday, the other literally forces you to redesign your entire business model. Both are completely external, but the sheer scale of the impact requires vastly different contingency plans.
Rounding out our taxonomy is requirement risk. The classic, dreaded moving goalpost, where the fundamental needs of the project suddenly shift. Imagine you're hired to pour the foundation for a small, single-family house. Halfway through the build, the client walks up and says, "Actually, we need this foundation to support a 20-story commercial skyscraper." It completely shatters everything. It doesn't matter how perfectly you manage your timeline, your tech, or your budget up to that exact moment. If the core requirements shift beneath your feet, your project faces a massive, existential obstacle that requires a total reset.
So, let's pull this all together. What we've built here is a complete mental model, a conceptual cheat sheet you can carry into every single planning meeting moving forward. We've synthesized all 6 phases of project vulnerability: technical, schedule, cost, resource, external, and requirement risks into one unified framework. And notice how they all flow logically together? They move from the physical tools we use, cascading right down into the time and money we spend, touching on the people we rely on, all the way down to those macro forces and shifting requirements of the outside world. Having this landscape clearly categorized just makes the absolute chaos of project management incredibly clear and manageable.
The crucial point now is taking this exact framework and applying it to your own daily endeavors. Because anticipating the chaos before it happens, that's the true hallmark of a great leader. So take a moment right now and reflect on your immediate priorities. Which of these 6 risks poses the absolute biggest threat to your current work? Is it a fragile software tool holding everything together? A dangerously tight schedule? An unpredictable external factor you've just kind of been ignoring? Or perhaps shifting requirements from a notoriously indecisive client? Identifying that single biggest vulnerability today is your very first, most powerful step in making sure that a possible future problem doesn't become your present-day disaster. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me, and keep anticipating the unknown.